Hi, everybody. Welcome to the third Women in Wood webinar leading up to International Women's Day this year. Thanks for coming. We're going to get started here because I want to make sure we have as much time as possible to feature these amazing women I have here with me today. So I'm just going to share my screen for a minute. Okay, so just a few quick housekeeping items. We do have a code of conduct that we ask you to consider as we make our way through this webinar. Obviously, everything that we do tries to create a respectful, welcoming space for everyone who joins our events. So I just ask that you treat speakers, organizers, and fellow attendees with respect at all times. Don't share any comments or questions that are harassing, discriminatory, or harmful. Respect that everyone in this environment may come from a different background than you, have different experiences or identities, and keep questions focused on the topic of the session rather than passing judgment. Hopefully no one would do that anyway. Don't record or distribute the content from the webinar unless you have explicit permission from Women in Wood. We will be recording this and we'll be editing and putting it up on our YouTube channel at a later date. And Women in Wood reserves the right to remove any attendee who does not follow this code of conduct. So as attendees, you'll be seeing the moderators and panelists today. We have a Q&A section. That's where I ask that you put all of your questions. The chat is open this time, thanks to some feedback we received from the last webinar, but it's not going to be moderated. So please use the Q&A for questions to make sure that I can see them as the moderator. You don't have any audio or video as an attendee, but we do welcome you to interact with each other in the chat. Closed captioning is available by using the toggle at the bottom of Zoom. And like I said, all these webinars are going to be recorded and edited in case anything comes up that is a vulnerable moment that we don't want to include in the forever version. And there will be a survey that follows the webinar. Please feel free to share any feedback so we can keep that in mind for future webinar opportunities. So if anyone's new to this environment, Women in Wood is a network that gives women and those who identify as women a platform to meet others in their field, build mentorship opportunities, ask questions about their careers, and learn about advancement opportunities. This network has always been and is remaining a grassroots initiative for women by women. When Jess Kaknavicius, who you will have seen if you attended the last two webinars, and I will say, lit this match 10 years ago, we had no goals or plan. We definitely didn't see this as a long-term thing. And it's been incredible to see women all over the world step up and take ownership of this group. You are the Women in Wood now. And also, some of you might know that it's already been 10 years and now we're in our 11th. We were able to celebrate with an epic event in Lindsay, Ontario last October, and other noteworthy activities like this webinar have happened in the last year. We wouldn't have been able to do these things without the financial support received by the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources, the planning skills and go-getter attitudes of Mel Burant and Katrina Van Osh, especially for the Lindsay event, and everyone else who helped us along the way. I also want to shine a light on all the champions and volunteers who have gotten us to this point, whether it's by telling other women about the network, putting together the newsletter, or sharing your experience in the Facebook group. You are all Women in Wood. Congratulations on 10 years. Who knew that the informal club we started would grow to more than 3,500 women all over the world, lifting each other up and encouraging others to join us in the forest sector? And now, without any further ado, we're going to get to our speakers, who I'm very excited about today. I'm going to introduce them before they give us their career path outline, and then hand it over to them. Stop sharing. So first up, we have Catherine Edwards. Catherine is a registered professional forester and an ISA certified arborist who has spent her career working for North American municipalities in forestry and environmental sustainability. Catherine was inspired to pursue a career in forestry after working as a research assistant with the Wolf Lake First Nation, supporting Indigenous community-based forest conservation initiatives. Since then, she's gained a broad range of expertise in forest restoration, Indigenous community engagement, and green infrastructure asset management. Her current role is the Environment and Natural Assets Specialist for the town of Halton Hills. Over to you, Catherine.
Thanks so much, Lacey. I'm just going to take a moment to share my screen with a little slideshow of photos. Hold on a sec. All right. Has that worked? Yeah? Okay, great. Thank you. So, hi everyone. Thanks so much for joining this afternoon. As Lacey said, I'm Catherine Edwards, and I am an Environment and Natural Assets Specialist with the town of Halton Hills. And first, I just want to thank Women in Wood for the opportunity to share my story and career journey with all of you. So I am a registered professional forester and ISA certified arborist with experience in urban forestry, naturalization, and asset management. And with the town of Halton Hills, my main job functions are developing the Green Infrastructure Asset Management Plan, leading tree planting programs, as well as implementing biodiversity initiatives. And the path that I took to get to my current role wasn't exactly straightforward, but I'm so happy with where I ended up, and I really love what I do, and I love working in forestry, and I've really enjoyed and learned from all of my diverse experiences in the field that have gotten me to where I am today. And yeah, I'm happy to have the opportunity to share that with you. So throughout my career journey, I've worked for municipalities and First Nations across North America. And while my career really started with a focus on rural and remote communities, I pivoted to a more urban focus along the way. But I thought I'd just include this map as sort of a cool visual to show all the different places that forestry has taken me. So I first started to consider pursuing a career in forestry during my undergrad. I was an environmental geography major, and I always ended up being most drawn to topics related to forests, forest conservation, natural resources. And in my second and third years of undergrad, I was an NSERC research assistant working on community-based forest conservation projects with Wolf Lake First Nation. And I was so passionate about the work I was doing there. I loved being outside and getting to work in these spectacular old growth forests with the community. And I was involved in a wolf population monitoring study and understory plant research that were really fascinating to me. And I also loved learning about different perspectives and the connection that the community had to the land. And I was in that role really exposed to the tangible positive impacts that forestry can have on the community and the environment. So after those 2 summers as a research assistant with Wolf Lake, I was really sure that I wanted to pursue a career in forestry. So at that point, I decided to get my Master of Forest Conservation degree at the University of Toronto. And for my internship through that program, I worked with a consulting company called Firelight in Vancouver. And through that work, I worked with Deneenoo First Nation in the Northwest Territories and Blueberry River First Nation in northern BC near Fort St. John. But after graduating from the MFC program, my career took a bit of a pivot when I decided to explore roles in more urban and peri-urban environments. And since then, I've worked for municipalities, including the City of Mississauga, New York, York Region, and Halton Hills. And I've held diverse roles with these organizations, including natural areas technician with the City of Mississauga, area forester with York Region, and now environment and natural assets specialist with the town of Halton Hills. And through these roles, I've really been able to build expertise in several areas of forestry. And that's really one of my favorite things about this industry is how many different specialties and areas of focus there are. And because of that, I'm just so happy that I decided to pursue a career in it. So, thank you.
Thanks so much, Catherine. I love your map of where forestry has taken you. I have a similar one, and I call it my yes map. You never know where you're going to end up when you say yes to opportunity. So thanks for sharing that with us. I also really, really love the wide range of experiences you've had. I'm sure that's made you a very well-rounded professional individual, and I look forward to hearing more from you in the Q&A.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Katie Jones. Katie is a forest technician based in rural British Columbia. Her career began in Central Ontario, which I'm sure she'll tell you more about. Since then, she's seen some diverse forest landscapes and is now in BC, leading crews and overseeing harvest operations. She's based in BC and brings her hands-on field experience and a passion for responsible forest management. So over to you, Katie.
Thanks, Lacey. Let's share my screen here. Okay, can you see that now? Perfect. Okay, hi everybody. Thanks for attending. It's great to see so many people on the webinar. Like Lacey said, my name is Katie Jones, and I am living in Nakusp, BC. I work for Interfor as a harvesting supervisor, and I'm excited to share my little story of my journey across the country and where my career has taken me so far. I'm 24 years old, so my career journey is not very long, but I've got to see some pretty cool things along the way so far. So I grew up in Southern Ontario and Guelph. I spent a lot of time in conservation areas and parks in Southern Ontario. So that kind of started my love for being outdoors, which led me to Fleming College. I enrolled in Fleming College, and I didn't really know much about forestry. I didn't learn too much about it growing up, and so it was pretty new to me. And the cool thing about Fleming College is in common first semester, you get to experience a bit of each environmental program that the college offers. And I got to do some forestry programs and courses and was really into that. Knew I wanted to work in the bush. So that's where I enrolled into forestry. So I'm sure lots of you can relate to starting off your career, and just wanted to include the photo of starting off as a forestry tech with my nice shiny bright cruising vest, not knowing what was ahead of me, but excited to be starting in forestry. So I finished school and graduated during COVID. At that time, there was a lot of uncertainty around job opportunities and what kind of my path would look ahead of me. But I ended up going back to Guelph for a year and working for a small private forestry company, getting lots of experience with tree planting and small private land management, which was great. But I realized it just wasn't the challenge that I was looking for. I was kind of looking for the next opportunity to push my skills further. That's when a job with Interfor came up that I applied for as a harvesting supervisor based out of Nairn Centre, which is in close to Sudbury, Ontario. So I applied to that job not having really much experience. I was just out of school, had 1 year working in forestry experience, and wasn't feeling super confident at the time with going into that interview, but it worked out and I ended up getting the position as a logging supervisor. So off I went to Sudbury and started working in the bush of Northern Ontario. Learning a lot of new things and learning a lot about forestry and conventional logging. So I added a few photos here. You can see the one with the feller buncher and my dog there. So shortly after I moved up north and started working in the bush, of course I had to get a dog. I don't know if many foresters who work in the bush don't have a field dog. So that was a positive experience right off the bat. Yeah, I've also pretty early on got to experience some cool trips. Working for Interfor, I got to do a career fair at the University of New Brunswick, and that's a photo of me posing with the lumberjack. So yeah, I'm sure that's a familiar sight for a lot of people on here. But just yeah, some cool opportunities right from the get-go, working in forestry. Um, yeah, another big part, starting my career was just joining the Women in Wood community. It started in college, and then shortly after, when I started working with Interfor, is when Katrina was hosting the Women in Wood camping trip. So that's the photo at the bottom. Got to get together with a really awesome group of ladies who worked in forestry, all different fields of forestry in Ontario. Really good to connect with them and just have an amazing support group. So I will always say that that's one of the most positive things working in forestry, is just having an amazing network of ladies. I'm just trying to get to my next slide here. There we go. Okay. Perfect. So these photos are now, I've made the move across the country, and these photos are in the Cusp and the Kootenays, where I am now. Yeah, so it was a really positive experience to get the opportunity to take a position out west. I was about a year and a half into my role as a supervisor in Ontario when I got the opportunity to interview for this job. I knew I'd always wanted to go out to BC and work in the woods and experience different types of logging. I was really interested in cable logging, steep slope logging, and heli logging. And that was kind of a dream of mine once I started in the logging industry, that I wanted to work in different logging profiles like that. So when the opportunity came up, I jumped on it. And as intimidating as it was, I made the move across the country by myself to this new place that I had never heard of before. But it was definitely like Lacey said, a yes move, where you don't know what possibilities are ahead of you or experiences you're going to have until you say yes. I think the one thing that I really had to embrace was the fear and anxiety around making major life changes and taking huge opportunities like this. And I think, yeah, one of my pieces of advice is don't let that fear get in the way. You don't know what's ahead of you until you give yourself the chance to take the opportunity or to have the experience. So in this case, it was really positive for me. I moved out not knowing what this job was going to look like exactly. Knew it was going to be similar, but a lot of differences is what I learned once I did come out here. A lot of new things to learn within logging and different logging profiles. So yeah, super positive. And then I'll kind of flip flop on that and go with, there is some very challenging days in the logging industry. It's not all easy. You're going to have a lot of days where things happen and it's going to be very unexpected. And you're going to have to be very adaptable to what goes on. Like the photo of the snowmobile getting stuck. There's going to be days where you're going to get stuck either in your pickup or on a sled, or you have a flat tire in the middle of the bush. Yeah, things are always going to be happening that you're going to have to just deal with on the go. And you get a lot of experience from it, which has been great. It really helps you come a long way when the unpredictable happens. I feel like when people ask me about my job and about being a harvesting supervisor, what that's like, I included the photo on the bottom left there of the first summer I moved to BC. We had a pretty active wildfire season. And I often say that we have a lot of different roles and jobs within being a harvesting supervisor, but what stays consistent is that there's a lot of putting out fires, and usually that's figuratively, where every day is a new challenge and there's lots of problems to always be dealing with, especially when it comes to managing people and logging operations. But sometimes it is literally like in this case, we had a pretty active fire season. We had a fire really close to one of our log dumps where we haul our wood to. So we spent a lot of time setting up sprinklers, wetting down log decks and equipment, trying to make sure that we didn't lose anything in that fire, which it all turned out good. But yeah, it was just a huge learning curve. Not having to deal with a lot of wildfire situations and coming out to BC and yeah, every day is a new adventure and every day is a new challenge. So that's just one of the many challenges we have to deal with throughout the year. Really positive experiences, like super great days I've had, or going out with some of my awesome coworkers. Working in forestry, you often get to take your dogs to the bush, so it's nice to have a bit of change of scenery. Have some great days to just get out there and yeah, be outdoors and see some really cool areas. Some other opportunities I've had is being able to go on helicopter flights for some blowdown salvage. So that's been cool, seeing some really cool areas that I've driven lots, but have not seen from the sky. So yeah, I feel like there's a lot of opportunities that you don't necessarily get to have outside of forestry. And then another one there is learning to drive the marine crew boat, which is pretty cool because in our area we do a lot of logging that we haul to the lake to our log dumps, and then everything gets boated down to the mills. So very different types of forestry where you go across the country, and really cool to see different types of it. Yeah, and then again back to the Women in Wood community. I've been lucky to move to BC and immediately start meeting and connecting with lots of women in the industry. And it was the year that I was going to BC that Katrina and Lacey had kind of put that bug in my ear that maybe it would be a good idea to try to do a Women in Wood camping trip out west. So my photos down below are the past 2 years I've organized a Women in Wood camping trip in the Kootenays. And yeah, I've just been able to see a lot of new faces, get a really awesome group of ladies together and just connect and talk about forestry together. So yeah, if you're in the area and you're watching, love to meet some new people, have some new people join us. So keep your eyes on the Women in Wood page, and we'll post the event there. So yeah, that's kind of my story. And I think the one piece of advice I'd give, like I said, is don't let that fear get in the way. And especially when it comes to logging and working in the logging industry, especially being a young woman, you really have to learn to stick up for yourself, speak out, and just be proud of what you do and have a lot of respect for what you do. It will take you a long ways. So that's my talk.
Thanks, Katie. I love that you brought Women in Wood with you to BC. Katie is now the unofficial official leader of the BC chapter. In case you don't know, anyone can do this. We encourage everyone to bring women together wherever you are. And if you want like some ideas or guidance or help promoting that, just reach out to us at the Women in Wood email or in the Facebook group, and we can help you with that. Katie, I have known since she was a student, and she's impressed me every day since I met her with her brave moves. And it makes me feel really happy for you to hear you saying that, you were able to overcome any fears that you had, but to me, you seemed fearless. So way to fake it till you make it, Katie. And I
Thanks,
also
Lacey.
really love following your dog on the job on Instagram. So thanks for sharing that. Next, we have Sara, who I've had the privilege of knowing for almost 25 years now. We were at UNB at the same time. She's a registered professional forester, originally from New Brunswick, and has a Bachelor of Science in Forestry and Masters of Science in Forestry from UNB. I'm not going to tell you about her career because I feel like she's going to, but right now she is a conservation officer with the government of Newfoundland and Labrador, which I feel very envious about all the adventures that she has in my homeland. But her main responsibilities include forest management planning as well as wildfire and wildlife response, which I hope she'll tell you a little bit about. So over to you, Sara.
Lacey. Yeah, it's been an honor to know Lacey for all these years. When I first started in forestry, it was kind of the same thing. I didn't really have a career path in mind. When I looked at programs at UNB originally, I was going into engineering. Last minute decision, ended up in forestry, and I've never once regretted it. It was one of the best things I've ever done. Showed up at forestry first day, and there was maybe a handful of women in the program at the time, maybe 6 or 7 of us.
Sara.
Yeah.
Did you want to share your screen, your slides?
Yeah,
there?
I can.
Okay.
Sure. Can you guys see that?
No. You need a hand? Mel, are you
Yeah,
on
I might need a
call?
hand there.
Mel's on it.
Perfect.
Okay, sorry. Keep going.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, and I remember at the time I was probably pretty naive. I was pretty small when I first started, a bunch of big guys in the class, never really thought about anything being an issue being a woman. And everyone I met was so supportive of us all being there. That was probably one of the best things that could have happened, because it made me not worry about applying for jobs in places that I probably would have never gone on my own. That first summer, I took a job in BC, had never even heard of Campbell River, had no idea where I was going, and flew out to work for Western Forest Products in remote camps. Didn't even realize I was going to remote camps. I was pretty naive. And the first day I was out there, I walked in, and someone had mentioned to me going in that there really hadn't been many women in the area in the camps for a while. And I remember everyone staring at me like I was an alien that first day. So it was my first kind of taste of kind of being an outsider, but the guys were great. And I never really had any issues with that and kind of rolled with it. Absolutely loved working in BC. There was many days where I was like, I can't believe I get paid to fly around in the Coast Mountain Range and do this for a living. So I started there. That summer that I was there, there was a lot of forest fires in BC as well. So we were doing silviculture work up in the Bella Bella Coola region, and we were sharing a heli base with some of the firefighters. I remember a helicopter coming down and some female firefighters came out. It was the first time I had ever came across female firefighters. And I was like, you know what? I want to give that a try. So looked into it. The guys that I known that had gone to Alberta to do fire were super supportive, helping me figure out how to get into that role and what I had to do. So the next summer, I ended up in Alberta on a helitack crew and absolutely fell in love with wildfire. Still loved the forest management side and the silviculture harvesting work that I did in BC. But I think once you get the fire bug, it kind of sticks with you a little bit. So I did that for a few years in Alberta, kind of bounced around different regions of Alberta. Made my way back to New Brunswick for a summer and worked for tree improvement and genetics, which was completely different than anything I had done before. So we were looking at crossbreeding, mostly jack pine. So I was climbing up into jack pine trees, absolutely covered in pollen, sap and sticky every day, but met some absolutely amazing people on the job and loved it, like absolutely loved it. So from there, this is over a few years now, ended up back in Alberta for a year as a forest officer. My husband works in wildfire as well. So I was like, well, I'll go back to Alberta and kind of see how that turns out. Ended up finding out I was pregnant on the way to Alberta. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to tell my boss that I'm starting this job and I'm pregnant? They were fantastic. Don't ever let that even remotely stop you from doing a career in the woods. I had no issues with it. Worked right up till I was 9 months pregnant with fire and forest harvesting. Was never an issue. Everybody was super supportive, was great. So I ended up having my first daughter, and my family is from New Brunswick. My husband's family is from Newfoundland. So we moved back to Newfoundland, try to have family close by, and got the job as a conservation officer, which kind of in a roundabout way ended up collaborating everything I've done in the years prior. So now I work with forest harvesting, wildfire. We do a lot of class presentations. Having that representation in schools, I think, is really important with kids, because growing up, I didn't see anyone female in the forest industry. My grandfather had a small harvesting business, so I was around it a lot, but there was never any female operators, never any female forest rangers that I ever seen. So we try to get out and do a lot of school classroom presentations. There's a picture here of me and my coworker with, I think that day we had 80 grade 2 students, which was wild, but they were so excited and so cute. And it was just really great to see their enthusiasm for it all and all the questions they had. But from that experience previously to now have a job that combines all of it has been fantastic. So between the wildfire and the wildlife response is another aspect that I don't have any pictures on here, so I wasn't sure if I should put pictures up or not, but we deal with anything from a polar bear to I've had a moose calf in my back seat of my truck to take it to a sanctuary for help. It's just animals I never thought I'd be up close and personal with as part of the job, and it's absolutely great. And now my daughters, I have two daughters now. I've never had an issue with being pregnant. Clothing wise, it's a little bit tricky to find clothing that fits you when you're pregnant working in the woods or have like Nomex on, but we've made that work. But now my daughters are randomly starting to say that they'd maybe like to go into forestry. So I feel like we've got maybe a new little generation of foresters coming up, which would be pretty cool to have that continue on. But my biggest piece of advice is, like Lacey had said, just say yes. Don't worry about being scared to do it. Just do it scared. There's many days that I absolutely love being in the woods by myself, so it's never been an issue. It's more sometimes people I find intimidating. So when I'm working with my job now, when I first started out, I was doing resource road building. So it was a lot of older men contractors that weren't used to a woman coming up, kind of not telling them what to do, but I was laying out the plan of what to do. That was a bit of a learning curve, and now I have the best relationship with them, and they're great. But it was definitely a bit intimidating to go up to a 60-year-old man and say, "This is what I want done, and please do it," when I probably looked like I was 12 at the time. So it's been great that way. But yeah, there's so many opportunities. I've done everything from tree genetics to like wildfire and public presentations, and just trying to get the word out there about forestry and get people interested in it. And it's been a great career. I'm 40 now, and I can't imagine doing anything else.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sara. And I just have to say, I do very vividly remember going to the gym with you when we were at UNB and you training for the test to be a firefighter in Alberta. And like, I was so impressed by you then, and I continue to be impressed by you now, and love hearing the stories about your adventures. And I think the point that you said about talking to kids about what you do as a woman, standing up in front of a class full of children, like I love doing that. And I think that having those little girls come up to you after and be like, "Oh, I want to be like your job when I grow up." If everyone in this call did that once a year, imagine all of the women in wood of the future that we could have out there. So take that little nugget home with you, everybody. Okay, next we're going to go to Mindy. Mindy is working in the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Forest like me. She entered the forestry profession as a second career, which I'm not going to steal her thunder and tell you all about that. I'm hoping that she will. So I think she provides a really great example for those people who might be considering a career switch into forestry. And she is an associate RPF in Ontario right now, and her current role is a silviculture forester with the Bancroft Minden Forest Company. So over to you, Mindy.
Thanks, Lacey, and thanks everyone for coming. I'm a little intimidated going last after all of these wonderful women in wood, but I'll do my best. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Okay. Just put it in the presentation.
A lot of thumbs. Perfect. Okay. So, yeah, as Lacey mentioned, I'm currently working as the silviculture forester with Bancroft Minden Forest in the Great Lakes St. Lawrence. I'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end. So I'll start at the beginning here. So prior to being in forestry, I was working as a high school teacher. So I came out of high school and just really liked sports. So I did a phys ed degree, which can be awesome. And when I was in school, I thought, the only thing I really don't want to do is teach. And then, the bills started rolling around and job prospects and other elements of physical and health education were few and far between. So I went to teachers college and became a teacher. So I moved out west, and truthfully, like there are elements of being a teacher that I really did enjoy. And there were many elements that I didn't. So I eventually, as the years progressed, was teaching phys ed and biology, and it was good, but there was something missing. So I started an outdoor education program. And you can see on the slide, it was beautiful. I was out west. I was living in Lillooet, BC, teaching. I started this outdoor education program, and forestry was a big component of the community. It was a logging town. And some of the presenters that I brought in were from the forest industry. And I remember just like, kids are running around, and these are high school kids hitting each other with sticks. And I'm listening to these forestry folks talk about their jobs and what they're doing. And I'm like, gosh, I really think that I want to do that. And simultaneously, I did want to move home back to Ontario. So I ended up deciding to go back to school. And when I first moved back to Ontario, I wasn't exactly sure what that was going to look like. And one of the things that I had considered was the master's program that Catherine did at U of T. And I ended up just volunteering at the Toronto Christmas market and meeting Jess, the Women in Wood Jess, and talking to her a little bit about, my situation, what I was doing. And she was like, it sounds like you want to be a technician, not a, maybe the master's of forestry program isn't quite right for you based on what you're telling me, because I wanted to do like forest measurement and field work and really focus on that. And she had recommended the forestry technician program at Algonquin College. And I was like, oh, like in my mind, it was a 2-year program, and I was in my mid-30s at the time, and I just like didn't feel like I had the time to do it. And she's like, well, like the one at Algonquin is actually 12 months. And so I looked into it and I did it. And so as a relatively older person compared to my classmates, I went back to school. And that's where I met Lacey. So that was great. She was one of my teachers there, and finished the forestry technician program at Algonquin College. And then graduation rolled around, and I was, you know, trying to figure out what the next plan was, what the next step was. And one of the reasons that I left my career in teaching was to come back home to Ontario. And then one thing led to another, and this contract opportunity came up to work back in BC again. So I decided to go and take a short-term contract out in BC on the West Coast on Vancouver Island. And it was a role doing, well, forest engineering, but cut block layout, creek traversing, and those types of things. And like it was so amazing and so wonderful and so hard. The terrain is so challenging, and the job was tough. And I think it was my second day. I was walking, we were walking back to the truck at the end of the day, and there was like all of these ferns, and it was covering this alder pole, and I tripped over this pole. It just like smashed my knee off of a rock. And I'm like 2 days into this job and not really feeling like I can tell these guys that I'm not really fit to walk up and down mountains today. And that was like one of the most challenging things. I remember just being kind of distraught and feeling like I couldn't do it. Um, Slugged it out, kept walking up and down the mountains, doing the block layout, and ultimately, like I think it was a just under a 1-year contract, and finished the contract, and then decided that maybe coming home was the right choice for me at the time. But it was such a cool adventure, and I'm so glad that I did it. But there were certainly challenges, and yeah, so I ended up moving back home. And so before I got the role that I'm in right now, I did some contract work. So I did some tree marking, which I loved. So, a lot of folks I know don't necessarily do tree marking in their forests. It's a bit of a different system. But just being out and being able to kind of like starting to see the trees, and you could see them, which ones needed to go and which ones needed to stay. And it was such a great job. And that was a contract too. And I hopped around a little bit. So like one of the things kind of being, a little bit older, and having had a full-time career for almost 10 years, and then kind of making that transition back to taking these short-term kind of entry-level contracts. It was financially tough, it was physically tough. But ultimately, after I spent a year tree marking, this position came up in Bancroft, and I'm from Belleville, which is just over an hour away, and that's where my parents still are. And I remember just like so desperately wanting this job and applied for it. And it was, initially my job was basically just doing a backlog of free to grow assessments, which if anyone's done free to grow surveys, that they're not the most fun things in the world. But like to me at the time, it was like just the absolute dream job. So I took the job, and it was kind of like a contract with possibility of extension. And as I went through my boss here, Svetlana, she was amazing, supportive, and started to grow and encouraged me to get my associate RPF. So I spent an obscene amount of time doing that. I think it took about 4 years. So finally, just this past year, I got my associate RPF. I moved doing renewal surveys to running our silviculture program. I do most of our forest operations prescriptions. There's managing contractors. So it was just a matter of like, taking these contracts and moving up, and then working with a supportive environment to grow the role. And I'm thrilled to be here. This is my little pal Walker. Katie mentioning working with dogs struck a chord for sure because he's my pal. And yeah, I feel really fortunate to be in this profession. If anyone's thinking about it, making a switch that they're sure about, I think you do it. So that's all.
That's amazing, Mindy. Thank you so much for those stories. Love it. From yours, the biggest takeaways for me were that it's okay to take a detour, and there's a question in the Q&A that I think you've already answered with lots of advice for panelists from you about how to make a mid-career shift to forestry. I think that your skills as a teacher make you a unique forester, but also and an amazing communicator. I have heard that about you, that you're very good with the public and with giving presentations about complex things. So I think that is a great, there's many different crossover careers that people have in forestry that make them unique to this profession, and we need that diversity. The knee banging moments, I feel like everyone has had those, and I have had many. The meltdown in the woods when you just like need to scream it out, and then no one cares because you're alone and you have to get up and move on and get on with your life. So those are classic. You were a keener when you were in class, when I was in front of your class, and I think that continues to shine through for you getting your associate RPF. Anyone who's gone through that process knows it's huge, and that's an enormous accomplishment I think you should be very proud of, and lots of kudos to you for making that happen. So
Thanks.
we're on the Q&A portion now. There's a few questions in the Q&A, but make sure to add more if you have them. I'm going to tag some people with these ones. When this one popped up, Katie, it made me think of you because of some of the challenges that you outlined. So I'll start with you on this one of what
Sure.
keeps you motivated on the tough days in your job?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one because I mean, you can only talk so much in a few minutes. But I've had to really keep myself motivated on a lot of days. Definitely had some great days, but have had a lot of frustrating days. Like I kind of talked about, managing people and especially loggers can be very challenging. And yeah, working in the bush can be very challenging. I think I just often remind myself that, you work hard to get to your position and get to your role, and especially being a young woman working in the forestry industry and traditional forestry itself, you just have to remember that we do have a place to be here, and you have to be proud that you're working in this industry. So for me, on days where I feel discouraged because I sometimes feel like I don't have as much of a voice, or I have to speak louder or work harder because of being a young woman in forestry, I just remind myself that I do have a place here, and and that moves me forward is proving to everyone that we can do this, and we're just as capable as anybody else.
Amazing. Love it. Mindy, would you encourage another woman to seek a career path in the forestry sector? Why or why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Like as I mentioned, it was a career shift for me. And I think, yeah, I think for me, um, what I love most about it is there's a lot of autonomy. There's a lot of there's so many different things that you can do in forestry for one thing. So, you know, if you're not into working in the bush alone, there's certainly options for you and you don't have to do that. And I think like if it's something that you're interested in, I think you got to go for it. You got to try it. It's not always easy. Those, especially if you're changing careers, a mid-career shift can be challenging in a lot of different ways, especially financially, but it's so worth it just to, you know, for me, it's those days when I'm out, I'm in the bush, I've got my dog, I'm doing my own thing, I'm working hard, but there are days when I can't even believe I'm getting paid to do the things that I'm doing. So yeah, I would encourage anyone to start researching it if you're not sure what you're going to do, because there's lots of options for sure.
That's so true. It's really unbelievable how many different directions a career in the forestry sector can take you. And I think that's been demonstrated by the diversity in panelists in all of these webinars. One thing that is an unfortunate truth, probably of any career or most careers, is that sometimes there's dips in the industry or not a lot of jobs available. Something that I fell into early in my career was limiting myself geographically. So I wanted to stay on the East Coast, and there were no jobs to be had at that time. And I almost counted myself out of a career in forestry by not being willing to move. And I feel lucky that I took that chance and made a go of it. That's definitely one of the most challenging parts about working in forestry, is maybe having to relocate to get that experience, to be choosier with the jobs that you get. Catherine, the next question I'm going to ask you, were there any pivotal moments in your career, big turns or decisions that you made that helped you get where you are right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think my answer kind of aligns with what you just said about not limiting yourself. Because when I started out in forestry, because of how passionate I was about my first experiences in the field, like working in Indigenous community-based forest conservation in the North, I was kind of limiting myself to a very specific type of role. And a pivotal moment for me was basically when I decided to step out of my comfort zone and try something different and experience a different part of the field of forestry. So at that point, that's when I decided to accept a position with the city of Mississauga. And I learned that actually I had also a huge passion for urban forestry as well. And, you know, sometimes it's hard to step away from what's familiar to us, or, you know, what we really know for sure we enjoy, in order to pursue something that's different and a bit of an unknown. So when I realized that that's where both like professional and personal growth really happens, is like when you get out of your comfort zone and try something new. That was definitely a pivotal moment for me.
Amazing. Again, we can't limit ourselves with what we don't know if we're going to like or not, right? Taking those
Exactly.
chances. Okay, this is a good question. I'm just going to throw it to all of you. Is there something about being a woman working out in the woods that no one told you about? Anyone want to take a first stab at that?
I think for me is when I was pregnant, of how worried everybody was about me being pregnant in the woods. I didn't expect that. Like I was constantly, people are like, be careful, don't worry about it. Like, just watch what you're doing. Can you still ride a quad? Can you still do this? But personally felt completely fine. I just was like, I had a basketball under my shirt kind of thing. I never felt any different. I found that was a little bit strange. The the way people perceive me being pregnant in the woods. I didn't expect that. Other than that, I do get a lot of questions randomly from older men about I shouldn't be out in the woods alone a lot. And I never worry about being in the woods alone. I'm in the woods alone all the time, but I do find that's a bit of a weird comment for me sometimes is, oh, you shouldn't be out in the woods alone. I'm like, well, it's my job. It's like, I absolutely love it. So I did find that a bit strange.
Yeah, it's even weirder when it's phrased as a question of, are you out here alone? And I have started to come up with some like white lies about that of, oh no, my coworker is just over there. Because really, like you mentioned before, like humans are more of the concern as a woman working out alone in the woods than wildlife in a lot of cases. And just being aware of how to navigate those situations. I think we could have a whole webinar on that alone. So maybe we'll make a note of that. Anyone else have anything to add on the things you didn't know about being a woman working in the woods?
I guess for me, it's more of a positive thing, which get to logging, working in a male dominated, you kind of have expectations about how things are going to be, but working with male crews, you have loggers too, but predominantly men, is they're all like, I've had a lot of respect from most of them, and a lot of support. So, going out to the bush, I feel I have a good support system out there. I know if I'm working alone or on sites, I do have people looking out for me. So I guess that's one thing that I didn't fully expect, but that's a positive thing to happen, working as a young woman in this field.
Great. We do have quite a few more questions and only 9 minutes, so we'll try to get to as many. Here's one that you can all just say. How long are your work days typically?
Mine vary. Summers are busier, so I've done jobs where like when I've worked in BC, in logging camps, I was starting at 5:30 in the morning, and sometimes we wouldn't get back till supper time. But we were there in the camp. That was it. We were in the camp working every day. Now it's more of an 8:30 to 4:30 style job, but summertimes can be with wildfires, or I do a lot of wildlife response after hours, so it can vary. It really kind of depends on the job that I was in.
Consensus about that. It can vary
Yeah.
to be regular sometimes, and then but you kind of at times need to be flexible, which could be a bit challenging with childcare if that's a concern. But having a good support system has worked out really well for you, Sara. Probably part of the reason why you moved home to Newfoundland, right? Okay. Here's something for you, Mindy. How do you stay motivated when on many contracts? How do you stay motivated when working contract works when it can seem like you won't ever get a permanent job?
Yeah, it can be tough. I spent yeah, I guess it was 2 years doing contract work after I had graduated from tech school. And with forestry in particular, because there's a seasonal element to it. It's certainly prevalent, but I would say yeah, stick it out and then try to grow your skills. Try to find someone who can do some skill building or training with you, or um yeah, it is hard. I can understand how that motivation can be challenging, but as I say, like the job that I'm in right now, it started out as a contract, and it was just a matter of like working as hard as I could, proving that I could be a valuable asset, doing everything that I could to show people that um, I could do the job and I could bring a lot to the company. So self-promotion, I think, is a challenge for women specifically. But yeah, try to promote yourself in the contracts, and hopefully that will come and turn into something a little bit more permanent.
For sure. I did 3 years of that too. I think a lot of people have, and you kind of looked at as a positive in the way that you're getting such a varied experience by jumping around and getting those different perspectives potentially from different employers. Um, here's one. Any advice on managing periods when you're out in the wild? I find it quite difficult at times. Anyone want to take that?
Just say deep cup.
I was
That's
gonna say.
And always having Advil or something in your cruising vest is a good thing to have as well. Hand
And
sanitizer,
toilet paper.
TP, all the essentials. I think there's been entire conversations about that in the women, but make sure if you're not in there already that you will join. This is a little readout, but I guess I'll try to summarize it. The question asker said she's, for a lot of her career, she's felt respected by her male colleagues, but lately noticed a bit of a shift, being dismissed or manned more frequently. And she's wondering if that's like the worldwide state of things, and men feeling more, I'm not sure how to explain that. Does anyone else have experience with this kind of shift, or how do you deal with by male colleagues?
When I was younger in my career, I had that a lot more than what I do now. Just proving yourself and showing up every day was the biggest aspect for me, to gain that respect. And I'm not finding that now, but definitely earlier in my career, I remember that people would dismiss me quite a bit.
Yeah, I would agree that with credibility comes, with time comes credibility, and making the point of participating in conversations when you have something to say will go a long way for you.
Can I add to that, Lacey?
Yeah, sure, please.
Yeah, just I mean, I talked about having a lot of positive experience working with men in the logging industry, but I've also had some struggles with, like we talked about, like Sara said, being younger, being a woman. It's hard to get respect from everybody, and in some situations, it's not going to be there. So I've had quite a few conversations over my career with men that I've worked with, to speak out, make sure that people are aware when they're not treating you fairly or the same, and just making sure you keep in touch with yourself, and you're keeping respect for yourself, because that's the biggest thing. Just knowing that you're doing your job well, and you have that respect for yourself. Oh, you're muted, Lacey.
Sorry. Quick question for Catherine, if you can squeeze it in a minute. Catherine, what different skills do you feel like you need being in urban forestry?
That's a great question. I think that there's a lot of overlap, actually, particularly when it comes to community engagement and outreach, and working with people, and at that intersection of forest management planning for the benefit of the environment, but also to meet people's expectations, needs, and to take into consideration cultural values and everything. So I was able to use some of the skills that I learned in my earlier experiences and transfer those. So
Awesome. I think the thing that I'm starting to realize is that the skills that we have in forestry are transferable and very similar across all parts. We just kind of tend to think of ourselves in these silos, but really we're all very much alike. And yeah, we have 2 minutes left. I will give you each maybe a quick moment if there's anything that's come up that you wanted to add to, or any last thoughts. I think we covered a pretty good range of topics. So I'll just take this opportunity then to thank you all for sharing your stories. I had a few teary-eyed moments, and I'm sure I hope that others who participated in this might have something that they can take away from this, and encourage themselves to be strong and brave in their careers. So thanks for your time, and thanks to everyone who attended. And who knows, maybe we'll have the opportunity to do more webinars like this in the future. Thanks again to the support from M&R in Ontario for giving us the funding to do things like this. So have a great day, everybody, and see you soon.